I am Terry Michael, and I'm back with a class on the 10 amazing, astonishing reasons for the 10 amazing plagues. We started a few weeks ago, and so we're going to continue and go on from today. And this is the most important one. This is the most important message that I think so far. Maybe the next couple of weeks it'll even be more important, but this one is the best. It really is. So you want to stay tuned. And I'm at Encounter Church in Centennial, Colorado. So I have a question. What pretty actress was the mummy's favorite? Farrah Fawcett. Farrah Fawcett. Okay. So we talked about last week. We talked about the let me find that. How the Israelites were protected in Exodus. And we mentioned how it was implied. Now, I'm not sure that I really described that really well, because what I wanted you to see is that the implication was whether or not the Israelites were protected for all the plagues, whether it was implied that they were protected or whether it was explicit that they were protected. So either one of those. So we can see that in each of the plagues, it either said explicitly that they were, and this is going to be important when we look at a few of the scriptures in Revelation later on. We looked at Revelation 7:3, where it said, let's see, was this it? Yeah, this was it. To not harm the land or the sea or the trees until we put a seal on the foreheads of the servants of our God. So there were 100. First, let me go back. I want to go back to this. Last week, what we covered. We covered the first 3 plagues. Okay. And we reviewed God's power over the Egyptian deities. We looked at water to blood in Egypt, water to blood in Revelation, and the meaning of the water to blood in the turning of water to wine in the Gospel of John. We also saw the blood and water mixed at Christ's crucifixion, which really was a different approach to that. I had not read that before, and where it said that he had died of a broken heart. That is really a new revelation to me. I'd never thought of that before. We explored frogs and frog heads and the 3 unclean frog spirits that came out in Revelation. Then there was dust, which the Lord can do anything with. Come on in and have a seat. No, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you. Take a seat. We just started reviewing, so you haven't missed much. Okay. So the same Hebrew word that was used, there was the dust, which the Lord can do anything with. He can create life or lice, because remember, he turned the dust into lice, and he made Adam from the dust. Right? So we have the same Hebrew word is used for them both. And so now we're going to look at the next few plagues. The 4th plague. Oh, I have notes for it. Let me hand you these notes. Could you give her those notes? There. Notes for you, notes. Because you can fill those in as we go along. The 4th plague was the swarm of flies. And that's in Exodus 8:20 to 24. It's the first mention in Exodus 8, it's the first mention of flies in the Bible. The Hebrew word is arab, like A-R-O-B is how it's spelled. And it literally translates to mosquito. You know, those really pesky things. You can imagine what that was like. My gosh. a swarm of them, okay, all over the place. It's literally translates to mosquito, diverse sorts of flies, or swarm. There could never have been any confusion as to what Pharaoh was being asked to do, because this is the fourth demand in the fourth plague. It's the fourth time. Moses said, "Let my people go." And this time, the demand was made by Moses alone. It wasn't Moses and Aaron. The Lord spoke to Moses and he told him to get up early in the morning. And I love that because I'm an early riser. I don't know, not everybody is, but I get up early. And go and meet Pharaoh, similar to when they went, when the Nile turned to blood. He told him to get up early. And that he was going to send the swarm of flies, to tell Pharaoh that he was going to send the flies. This early morning meeting must have reminded Pharaoh from the time with the Nile River, because that's how it was. Aaron didn't accompany Moses on this mission. And then was there a warning? Yes, there was a warning. He did tell them that the plague was coming. The instruction was he was to confront Pharaoh. And the distinction was, now as I said when I first started, we explained last week, we were talking about were the plagues, the distinction, what did Israel suffer under the plagues? And this is going to be important later on. Did Israel suffer under the plagues? Well, sometimes it explicitly said they didn't, and sometimes it was implied that they didn't, because it said that the Egyptians were the ones who suffered. So here it's explicit, it's absolute, because in the first plague it was implicit. In the second it was implicit, so you weren't sure. But in the fourth plague it says, the outright Exodus 8:22-23, it says, "But on that day I will separate and set apart the land of Goshen, where my people are living, so that no swarms of insects will be there, so that you may know without any doubt and acknowledge that I, the Lord, am in the midst of the earth. I will put a distinction between my people and your people. By tomorrow, this sign will be your evidence." Unfortunately, Pharaoh resisted it, didn't believe it, persisted and ignored it. I don't know if we get the word ignorant from ignoring something. Maybe. So here he showed him this specifically there would not be any flies. Psalm 78:45 says, "He sent swarms of flies among them, which devoured them." Well, this says flies, but it is the same. It is generally thought that the fly, or the mosquito, as the word is in Hebrew, in Egyptian mythology, that it gave protection or against any disease or misfortune. So they had stone amulets, the things to wear, okay, in the form of flies. And they were made in Egypt as early as 3500 BC. In the Old and Middle Kingdoms, the fly was depicted on various ritual artifacts, including the so-called magic wands that they would wave, often carved from hippopotamus ivory, because the hippopotamus were there, and probably intended to protect the owner from harm. The Amplified Bible calls them blood-sucking gadflies. According to a dictionary, gadfly is a type of fly of a family Tabanidae, Tabanidae. They bite or annoy the livestock, and you can imagine what it was like, the livestock and the people. And you know how they twitch and their tails go, look, try to get rid of it. But the Amplified call them blood-sucking because these gadflies caused trypanosomes trypanosomes, which is a disease in camels. It's a simple microscopic organism, protozoan, that lives as a parasite in the blood of the vertebrates, including human beings. It is transmitted by insect bites and causes serious disease. You remember the movie The Fly? Do you remember that? Oh gosh. I don't think I watched that whole thing because it was so gruesome. It was gruesome. I mean, really, it was. Oh, okay. Well, at least the Lord didn't mutate animals here into half fly or whatever. So the devil was called, remember, the devil was called Lord of the Flies. That's what Beelzebub means. His name was derived from the Canaanite Baal, B-A-A-L, meaning Lord, and Zebub, of the flies. This god of Egypt was supposed to prevent just what happened. Beelzebub was supposed to prevent it. In the New Testament, Beelzebub is called the Prince of Demons. Jesus called him the Prince of Demons. But they likened Jesus, when Jesus performed a miracle, they said, "You do this by the power of Beelzebub." Can you imagine that? They're saying that. That was in Matthew 10:25, and several other. There's Mark and Luke also records it. But he has no power against the Lord at all. Beelzebub has no power against the Lord. In Exodus 8:24, it says, "And the Lord did this." There's no mention of Aaron raising his rod, Moses raising his rod. The Lord did it. So under concession and promised release, we have that if you want to make a note of it. Exodus 8:25-31. Many times we're brought to our knees when we're faced with circumstances which we don't have any control. They had no control over this. So Pharaoh, because he had no control and couldn't do anything about it, conceded to a point and called Moses and Aaron and told them that he would let the people go. He did so, but he wanted to change the terms. He still wanted to have it his way in this, that famous song, "Have It My Way." I won't sing it. But when you want to have it your way, I mean, it's a cool song and all that, but it's not a good thing to do. So, and he said that they could worship there in Egypt. So Moses was quick to point out that they maybe be stoned for sacrificing animals that the Egyptians considered sacred. That was in verse 26. The Egyptians believed many animals were sacred. They believed the gods fled to Egypt and took the refuge animals. It's kind of like a Noah's Ark thing. They worshipped almost every animal that was on Noah's Ark. Almost every animal in the kingdom, I'll tell you. They had, this is what they believed. They believed it. Jupiter was in the form of a ram, Apollo in the form of a crow, Bacchus as a goat. Remember, we've heard of Bacchus. Juno as a heifer, Diana as a cat, Venus as a fish, Mercury as an ibis, which we talked about the ibises before when Moses went across into Ethiopia, and he had the ibises to take out the snakes. Very smart. Therefore, they thought they were protected and they worshipped them. They also believed in reincarnation and feared that they might be killing one of their relatives if they killed an animal. This is what they thought. Moses said in verse 27, he said, "Well, we're just going to go 3 days. 3 days." Oh, okay. I don't know why he told them that. So verse 28 records the words of a king who had begun to lose control, but who endeavored to maintain his hold. He tells Moses that they may go, but not very far. Okay, he's giving him a little on the leash. Which is not very far mean? How far is not very far? Yeah. 3 steps. Again, Pharaoh asked Moses, entreat the Lord for me. The Hebrew word recorded when Pharaoh asked Moses to pray in Exodus is athar, A-T-H-A-R. Its meaning is to burn incense, to worship. So he wanted Moses to burn incense for him. You go do that for me, to intercede. It's also interesting that Pharaoh would ask Moses to do that. The Egyptians knew that it was what it was to burn incense and worship. Regrettably, they didn't know who to worship. Moses agreed, and he didn't, I don't believe he burned incense, but he agreed and he pleaded for Pharaoh to the Lord to remove the flies. The Lord removed them, and in Exodus 8:30, he said, then until there was not even one left. Not even one. And Pharaoh hardened his heart again. So the fifth plague, the plague on the livestock, is in Exodus 9:1-7. After Pharaoh hardened his heart, the Lord told Moses to go to Pharaoh, tell him for the fifth time, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to let my people go. And then he's very hard of understanding. So Pharaoh is warned, this time he is warned that the hand of the Lord is going to fall upon the Egyptian livestock, which are in the field, the horses, the donkeys, the camels, the flocks, and that a severe plague will come against him. So was there a warning? Yes, there was a warning, but the timing wasn't given. He wasn't told when. Whereas the other ones, he's the warning. I call it the morning warning. Those other ones, I think it was plague number 1 and 4, had the morning warning. His instruction, go to Pharaoh, wasn't confront, just go to him. And was there a distinction made for the Israelites? Yes. This is, again, an absolute, and we're going to look at this later, how important this is to us. Instruction, Exodus 9:4, 6-7. But the Lord will make a distinction between the livestock of Israel and that of Egypt. I love it, because I just love it. So that no animal belonging to the Israelites will die. Verses 6 and 7 reiterate it and adds that Pharaoh investigated and he found that not one of the animals of the Israelites had died. So he went out and looked to see if this really happened. And yes, it did. But he still would not let the people go. The Egyptians worshiped gods in many places. And from the pharaohs, the workers, the peasants, the priests, they were different gods in different places. Could it be because Egypt worshiped gods of all types all over Egypt, that the Lord demonstrated he was Lord over each one of them? He showed them with each plague that he was Lord over it. Doesn't the Lord say, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. And thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. Now, why would he say the Lord our God is one? Except to show them that there aren't a ton of gods. There aren't thousands of gods. There aren't 10 gods. There aren't 5 gods. There's one God, and he is the Lord. That's in Deuteronomy 6:4-5. The other thing is, you think about the Israelites had lived in Egypt for hundreds of years. Don't you think they had picked up the thing of worshiping these other gods? So he had to reiterate to them, just leave that all alone, which unfortunately didn't stick with them, because remember, they went later on and they built Ashtaroth and they worshiped Baal and they did all of this. So he tried to tell them, but he told us too in Mark 12:29. He said, the Lord, our God is one, and you shall serve him only. Let's go back and look at the significance of the cattle, of Egypt's cattle. From very ancient Egyptian rock carvings in the Eastern Desert, we can surmise that the earliest of times, cattle were viewed as an important indicator of personal status. It's like having a bunch of cars, I think. Right? Well, I mean, if you have a nice car, right, it's a status. It's a status. I mean, they push it, don't they? I won't mention names. I won't mention names. But, if you see a certain car going down there, you go, oh, look, there's wow, isn't it cool? Yeah. But, well, cattle, I guess maybe weren't quite the same. But anyway, that's how you could look at it. Fancy cattle. And their god, there was a god called Hathor, Hathor. She took on certain personalities. She was depicted as a cow. Not what I would watch. No. She originally was a personification of the Milky Way, which was seen as the milk that flowed from the udders of a heavenly cow. So that's how they did it. She was a goddess of love, dance, and alcohol. Wow. Yeah, alcohol first, then dance. She was worshipped in 5 nomes in Upper Egypt, which, Upper Egypt was on the south side, and 1 in the Lower Egypt. Hathor, Isis, Nut, and Bat were 3 goddesses. Now, see, that's 4 names, so I don't know why that says 3. Depicted often as cows, with the horns of cows or the ears of cows, and because of this, and because of the relationship of Pharaoh as a living god, the cow came to symbolize the mother of Pharaoh. Oh, very strange. Okay. The larger blow was against their chief god, the bull, Apis, A-P-I-S. Egyptians celebrated the feast of Apis for 7 days. I don't even have a 7-day party. So he was unique from other gods, and he was not an incarnation of the god Ptah, the creator of the universe. No, he was originally considered to be the incarnation. I take that back. Rewind. Only one bull was the Apis bull at a time. And according to Haley's Bible Handbook, the bull was the most sacred of all animals. Upon its death, it was embalmed and treated as a king. It was even buried in a glorious sarcophagus. Yes. We have all these Egyptian gods and the donkey, the as I mentioned, the asteris, the lion, the horse, the sphinx, the dove, all of that. And the horse was also considered to be a sign of wealth. The donkey, they had certain colored donkeys. The camels were a sign of wealth, and I think they are. They had a figure of a sheep-headed woman. Now, they keep putting all these different heads on the women. I would say the women's rights, stop it. Do they eat meat? I don't know. They had lots of animals. I think they did eat meat. I believe it's in India that they don't eat cattle. Yes, but I believe the Egyptians did. Yes, yes, possibly. Except maybe some of them, like the cattle. I don't know. I'm not sure. It's a good question. A figure, where they had a figure of a sheep-headed woman, was found in a funerary archaeology, which is thought to represent Isis. She was venerated in certain cities and was known by many names and celebrated as the god mother. But remember, we had the woman with the crocodile head, and then there was a woman with the sheep's head, and there was another one. And I thought, whoa, this is pushing it. Okay. They don't have any men ones, right? So verse 5 and 6 tells that the Lord appointed a time. He said tomorrow, and the next day, all the cattle died. The Lord proclaimed judgment against Egypt's livestock. He demonstrated power over their gods and did great harm to their prosperity. All in one. This is all in one. And their power to obtain and sustain wealth in their life. How would that affect us if that happened here? If the Lord did that here? Oh, wow. But I believe he was trying to show the Egyptians how futile, pointless, and useless their idols were. He was trying to bring them into a better understanding. You know, this is how the Lord says, learn of me, right? Jesus said, learn of me. And the more we know about him, the stronger we become in our faith. It just stands to reason. Like when you first start to get to know someone, you're not as casual, as comfortable as, you know, and then once you spend time with them and you get to know them better, you feel more secure. And so I believe this is one way that God is showing us these things now so that we can know him better. So we're going to go to the sixth plague. How are we doing on time? Good. Okay. I'll look at that in a minute. Okay. Sixth plague. Ashes from the brick kiln or furnace were used against Egypt. Ashes or dust turned to boils. Is that incredible? It's Exodus 9, 8 through 12. Warning? Was there a warning? No, there was no warning to Pharaoh this time. Again, it's like warning, a warning without time, no warning. And then it goes back to warning, a warning with no time, and then warning. Instruction? None. No instruction. And distinction for the Israelites, whether they were protected, it's implicit. It doesn't say, there's not a scripture that says it didn't happen to them, but there's scriptures that say it happened to Egypt. So this time the Lord told Moses and Aaron that Moses was to take the ashes or the dust and sprinkle it toward heaven. Wow. In front of Pharaoh. And the dust became boils and sores on man and beast. Whatever. Now, the distinction was that the cattle died, but there's the beast, and there's different words used for these animals. So not all, when it says that the livestock or the cattle died, it's not all of them, because there were still some that were alive. Excuse me. These boils caused one to have fever, and the afflicted part of the flesh burned and swelled. Exodus 9, 10 through 11 says, boils broke out on the people and the animals. The magicians couldn't even stand before Moses because of the boils, because they were on the bottom of their feet. And you can imagine, even Pharaoh had them, because it's all over Egypt. But it's obvious Moses and Aaron weren't affected because they could stand. And probably the Israelites weren't affected either. Now, where did he get the ashes? Got them from a furnace that was probably used for sacrifice. So the Lord took the ashes of their worship and turned it against them. The Hebrew word for furnace is kipson, which is a smelting furnace. In Dake, remember our Dake's Bible? I have it here, I'll show it to you later. Oh, good. You have one. Awesome. Oh, how awesome. I'm so glad. Oh, you're going to love it. Wow. Yeah. The commentary, the notes. Yeah. It's great, isn't it? Oh, I know. I love it. Well, in Dake, it says that it refers to the smoke of the destruction of Sodom. So the word is not limited to a smelting furnace. Here it could mean the place of human sacrifices, where such offerings were made in the fire to propitiate or appease the god Typhon, the evil principle, in the hope of averting plagues, which didn't work. Right? If Moses used those very ashes to produce another plague, if so, Moses used those very ashes to produce another plague instead of averting one. That's what Jakes has said. Also, the gods they appealed to for healing, Imhotep and Thoth, were helpless and they were unable to remove the boils. They were even unable to keep the boils from the magicians, as was said, who implored them for their help. Since Pharaoh persisted in his stubbornness and would not hearken or listen to them, God didn't try to change Pharaoh's direction. He allowed his heart to be hardened. So, what's the revelation connection of the sixth plague? Not all of the plagues have a revelation connection. We covered some last week that had a connection, that they're mentioned in Revelation. Now, the sixth plague does, because it says in Revelation 16:2, the first angel went and poured out his bowl on the land, and ugly, festering sores broke out on the people who had the mark of the beast and worshipped its image. Okay, don't forget that part. Had the mark of the beast. The bowl was poured out on the land, and sores broke out, just as in the sixth plague, when Moses tossed it into the air. Now, I don't totally, I'm not a person who knows Revelation expository. I can't pull everything out, but let's just cover some of the things that to set it in place to see where this sits in Revelation, to get a reference as to how these seals, trumpets, and bowls occurred. The seals occurred first. In Revelation 5, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, who's Christ, who's also called the Lamb of God, he removes the seals from the backside of the book. Now, I've always, whenever I've read this, and I've read this a lot, he took the book, and there were the seals. He took the book, there were the seals. But I never realized the seals were on the book. So he had to take the seals off in order to get to the book. Did you know that? I didn't. I mean, I read it. And I thought, okay, so were these seals on the back of the book, and he had to take, and each seal he took off, something happened. Actual seals on the book. When he opens the seventh seal, we won't go into the first six, okay? There's silence in heaven for about half an hour. Wow, that's mind-boggling. It doesn't say why, but it states that there is. Then the seven angels are given seven trumpets. And we talked about the other angel, remember, in our first class, who had the golden censer with the prayers of the people and the incense of prayers, and he filled it with fire from the altar and cast it on the earth. Then the seven angels prepared to sound the trumpets. Now, I said all that to say this, that this occurred, the bowls occur after the seventh trumpet, I believe. Okay. So are the bowls parallel to the trumpets? Because in one of the commentaries I read, they said that they were. That's something else, and that's a whole other class. It's a whole other time. Someone else. Are they one and the same? And are they recorded to accentuate the events? Well, we don't know, but we can look into it later. What about the boils? Ellicott's commentary says the angel which receives a command departs and pours forth his vial or his bowl on the earth. All the vials are poured into the earth. Generally, the first angel pours his vial upon the earth, that is the dry land, and there came evil and painful sores upon the men. Those are the ones who took the mark of the beast. We know that because that's what it said earlier. Okay. The plague falls, and he goes on to say the plague falls on those who took the mark of the beast and worship, like the plagues of Egypt. They are directed against those who aid the oppressor. Okay. The plague here described resembles the sixth of the Egyptian plagues, the plague of boils. Egypt is one type of world power, and the plagues are used as types also and are not to be understood. Well, he says they're not to be understood literally. I believe they are. The plague of the evil sore denotes some throbbing and hateful sore, perhaps spiritual or mental. Now, see, I don't really agree with that it was just spiritual. I think it was physical, because if they couldn't stand, if the magicians couldn't stand because of it wouldn't be because of something mental. I don't believe that. And also, there were instances of boils in the Bible that are outside of Egypt. These are the same boils that Satan afflicted Job. Remember Job, from the sole of his foot unto his crown, Job 2:7? It's the same word. In 2 Kings, also we see Hezekiah had a sickness unto death, which was a boil, but God healed him. So to say it was mental, I don't believe that. The Hebrew word for boil is sihen, meaning to burn, inflammation, which is what we talked about earlier. Leviticus 13:23, also that same Hebrew word is used for boil, but this time it's because it was going to be a distinguishing sign if someone had leprosy or not. If the bright spot didn't spread, it was a burning boil, so they didn't have to treat it as leprosy. Can we deduce that boils are a judgment? I'm sure we can. Yes. It will occur on those who take the mark of the beast. That's a judgment. As the Lord dealt with Pharaoh, he will deal with those who reject him. It's very, very sad. So, let's see. I can go into the seventh plague, or what's the time? Oh no, I'm not going to do the seventh plague because I want to go over this. This is more important. Earlier I said I wanted, I had something I wanted to cover and to not forget when we talked about the distinction of the Israelites. Okay, how important is it? Revelation 16 talks about the frogs that came out, the unclean spirits of the mouth of the dragon, right? We covered that last week. The three unclean frogs came out of the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. Each one had a frog, a spirit, unclean spirit come out. I want to go to Revelation 13, and this talks about the beast from the sea. And remember when we looked at the sea and what did it mean? Did it mean Jerry had said, was it the Christian people? It was supposed to mean people. When the Revelation talks about the sea, well, the beast from the sea is he the beast from the people because he's from the sea. That's a caption that's used in the Bible. It says the beast from the sea, and I'm just asking the question. It says, I stood on the sand of the sea and I saw a beast rising out of the sea, maybe the people, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard. Well, we won't go into that. Go down a little bit more from there. One of the heads was as if it had been mortally wounded, and the deadly wound was healed. We have heard of that before. And all the world marveled and followed the beast. So they worshipped, again, worshiping the dragon who gave the authority to the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, who can be like this? who is able to make war with him? Who can overcome? Who can overcome him? It was granted. The beast opened his mouth in blasphemy, and I'm just running through it a little bit faster. And he blasphemed God, his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven. And it was granted to the beast to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And authority was given him over every tribe. It didn't say one tribe, two tribes. No, every tribe, tongue, and nation, and all who dwell on the earth will worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. So whose name, it says, all will worship him, whose names have not been written in the book of life. Well, how is our name written in the book of life? Our name is written because we accept Jesus as our Savior. Accept what he did for us. It's such a simple thing. That's how our name is written. But if they're not written, whoever's name is not written in the book of life will worship the beast. So let's go on from there. It says, anyone has an ear, pay attention. Then the beast from the earth. Now, from the earth, could it be the economy? I'm not sure. I saw a beast coming up out of the earth. He had two horns like a lamb, and he exercises authority over the first beast, and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. Okay. Performs great signs. Well, God performed great signs in Egypt, and they didn't believe. But here we have him performing great signs in Revelation, and guess what? They're going to believe it. They are. And deceives those who dwell on the earth by those signs which he was granted to do in the sight of the beast. Telling those who don't, I wasn't going to go into all this, but this is a message I believe the Lord gave me for this plague, coming out of this study rather. Telling those who dwell on the earth, make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword, the first beast who came out of the sea. He was granted also power to give breath to the image of the beast, that it would speak and cause as many as would not worship the image to be killed. He causes everyone, small, great, rich, poor, free, slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their forehead, and that would no way they would be able to sell except one has the mark of the beast or the number of his name. Now, he causes all to do that except who? The ones who have, whose name is in the book of life. Is that a distinction? Oh my word, yes. That's a Christian distinction, because we're known as Christians, as little Christ. But Christ is from the tribe of Judah, and he's Jewish, folks. He is Jewish, but we are called Christian because of his name, Christ, and that means Christians means little Christ, or followers of Christ. So as we are Christians and our name is written in the book of life, we don't receive that mark. And guess what? We don't receive the boils, because they're coming on. We read that earlier. That plague, or not a plague, but it's a bowl. Okay, the judgment is coming upon those who have the mark. So when I think about it, I think, okay, if I can't buy or sell, or my family can't buy or sell, am I going to be tempted? Am I going to be torn away to go, oh, I have to take care of myself, I have to take care of my body, I have to, am I going to give in to that? No, because I have a greater future, eternity with God, number one, right? And I don't want to go through this and receive all these boils and stuff. I don't know. I'd rather not buy or sell than get all that judgment, right? And to have judgment for eternity, because it's not just in our life here, it's forever, eternity. So that this is the most important thing I think that came out of this study so far. And I had no idea what was going to come out of it until like this morning. I started thinking about it. I woke up, how it is. You wake up, and you're thinking about something, and I thought, oh, Lord, okay, there's the mark. There's this, there's that. Okay, I've got to go look that up. Okay. And it's great. I mean, it's great. Read Revelation 13 and make sure your name is written in the book of life. And thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.